a tower to the infinite, this imagined spectrum from the light of a star. Yet the romantic close of the century was also to trigger in the science of thermodynamics, which the older Carnot, strategist of the Revolution, would leave to his son, the dilemma foreseen in Leibniz, that indestructible energy may go slack. So, for the theology of rational science, Pascal had the last word. But our whole groundwork cracks, and the earth opens to abysses. The particle wave ambivalence of light, deeply bedded in 18th century, in England from Newton to Young. The ambivalence of matter as atom and field, working from Galvani toward the assumed stretched bands of Faraday's electric force in void. The two stories we seem to be telling of 18th century, one an art vagary of reason's mockery and heart's search, the other a scientific dream of unlimited progress, begin to converge. Through the first quarter of the century, while milk was raising high baroque over the Danube, and the great vent was flowing out everywhere, from Bernini and Borromini of Rome, through Juvara in Turin, and the Churrigueresque in Spain, all the way to this earthquake-destroyed, 1728 rebuilt and again destroyed Senora del Carmen in Guatemalan Antigua, through those same years. Couperin Paris, with Watteau and his followers, here Lancret, were refining the sentiment and fragile wit of Rococo. In England, Congreve marks the transition. Milliman's Contemplation of Marriage in the Way of the World, 1700. My dear Liberty, shall I leave thee? 'Tis more than impossible. Positively, Mirabelle, I'll lie abed in the morning as long as I please. Mirabelle. Then I'll get up in the morning as early as I please. Millamant. Ah, idle creature, get up when you will. Pope polished the verse. Snuff or the fan supply each pause of chat, with singing, laughing, ogling, and all that, which gay would apply in trivia. The ladies gaily dressed, the mall adorn, with various dyes, and paint the sunny morn. You'll sometimes meet a fop of nicest tread, whose mantling peruke veils his empty head. Him, like the miller, pass with caution by, lest from his shoulder clouds of powder fly. But the 18th century break sharpened also within Rococo a fierce counterpole to the courtly. Magnasco's irony of monks in the old skull caves of earth, the dissonances here of devil's trill Tartini, speak what from darker Baroque, Dryden, when I consider life 'tis all a cheat. I'm tired of waiting for this chemic gold, which fools us young and beggars us when old. Through Swift, as of religious sects, worshippers of wind, inspired, literally blown into, with every man a pair of bellows applied to his neighbor's breech, after certain gripings the wind and vapors issuing forth, having first by their turbulence and convulsions within, caused an earthquake in man's little world, distorted the mouth, bloated the cheeks, and given the eyes a terrible kind of relievo, at which junctures all their belches were received for sacred, the sourer the better, and swallowed with infinite consolation by their meager devotees. Clouds to Johnson's vanity of human wishes, that life protracted is protracted woe. In Bach's Germany, Rococo innovation, courtly or splenetic, is carried like the Brandenburg Concerti on the great surge of residual Baroque. Conceive the Palace of Pommersfelden from the pomp of these stables. Though even in Bach or in the decoration of Pommersfelden, within the might of Baroque, the style lightening of Rococo is brilliantly advanced. Yet through that extravagance and preciosity, the classical and pre-romantic was being explored, a melodious interfolding in which Bach's Largo of the Concerto for Two Violins seems to outdistance the works of his sons. In Viennese sculpture, Donner's St. Martin and the Beggar, cast in lead, so rounds its conscious contours. In poetry, Klopstock's Messias, in classical hexameters, the first three cantos, published in 1748, the others thereafter, evokes out of Milton such neo-Attic Baroque. Seraph, I will descend. Follow me, my chosen, in your beauty from afar. Seraph, ich steig hinunter. Folge mir, mein Erwählter, in deiner Schöne von fern nach. Donner's Andromeda is a fountainhead of that swelling idealism. These the seraph freed, and robed their new aspiring forms in deathless radiance. Diese verklärte der Seraph und goss unsterblicher Strahlen den neuen schwebenden Leib. Zimmermann's last ceilings melt Baroque and Rococo, Renaissance and classical, into a rainbow of academic romance. Klopstock, on the other verge of the road of suns, raised himself upon his gleaming chariot Eloa, against whose coming through all heaven beat 1,000-voiced acclaim that rang about the golden axles. Behind him, like clouds, billowed his robes and streaming hair. Even the new astronomy is whipped into Klopstock's God and Seraph journey from heaven to earth. The Almighty passed the star field named the Milky Way, 1,000 stellar miles, the space from sun to sun, his measure, as he neared a world where men also were found, like us, but innocent, immortal forms. Kant's 1755 island universes are nebular systems of suns, like our Milky Way. So this 1762 edition of Desfontenelles Sur la pluralité des mondes floats the solar system in a cloud of angel-faced stars, each circled by planetary worlds. It was within Bach's lifetime that his own sons took up the gallant style of Italy, France, and Mannheim, paralleling against the weight of the old Baroque, the passionate levity of Rothenbuch pulpit. Let K.P.E. Bach's Magnificat, composed a year before Johann Sebastian's death, rear the expressive arch to Haydn and Mozart. In the St. Luke of that pulpit, Baroque force, by the always more personal involvement of the advancing century, anticipates storm and stress.
Keep
In painting, Malperch is the master of that search, where the base of Italian chiaroscuro is stretched and whirled on the agitations of person. As emotion ebbs, Philip Emanuel's instrumental texture is as suave as Johann Michael Fischer's caressing of decent facade. The Meadow Church, Die Wieskirche, finished 1754, is Zimmermann's final gem of openness and delight. Haydn had written his first Mass while it was building. The second, the great organ Mass, whence this Kyrie, followed the church by 12 years. Amazing, in a cult and tradition so ornately sectarian, hearts appeal to nature. To enter the Wieskirche is to pursue Rococo, almost to the coronation extravagance and joyful immediacy of Mozart. In the hunting lodge of the Nymphenburg, Cuvilliés had brought Rococo lightning to its secular triumph, the silver frosting of a mirrored filigree. But did not the old Bach himself tend that way, whenever he touched the harpsichord in the manner of Couperin? For the fused polarity of Baroque against Rococo, we go from this hall of the Amalienburg a few miles north. To a vault the Asen brothers were constructing about the same time, 1735, at Weltenburg on the Danube. Yet the same Bach, whose harpsichord interlude matched the one, in his organ toccatas and fugues, gives the other its strongest cognate. But the stretch from this mighty Baroque to the weightlessness of Cuvilliés exhibits the 18th century already in Barclayan flight. from the solidarities of Leibniz, of assertive cadence, muscled gesture, intestinal clouds, the whole conscious rhetoric of the formulated earth. It is a winging which might take us back at least 200 years to a prior vaulted filigree, the last defiance of space and mass in the lacework of flamboyant stone, Saint-Pierre in Caen, with a setting by the 15th century blind organist Conrad Paumann of Nuremberg. Small wonder the wished revival of the style Congreve had called rude as Gothic was already underway. It is always a happy surprise, traveling abroad, to move from the ostentations of the courtly continent to the special green of rural England. Is the charm of Laycock Abbey backward or forward looking? A 13th century monastery was here, which became a Tudor house at the Reformation, yet it was tenderly Gothicized after 1750. And what estate near Bath would so perfectly fit the romance of Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey? So Thomas Arne, enamored of Elizabethan music, Shakespeare and Milton, was reviving and exploring, as in his 1738 Comus, a style of pre-romantic and ballad simplicity. About the same time, at St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall, the 15th century Lady Chapel of another ancient priory became such a neo-Gothic parlor as any of Austen's heroines 60 years later might have visited in the demure pursuit of eligible Knightleys, Bingleys, Brandons, Bartrams, Wentworths. To have come from the 11th century castle to that house is as clear a progress as in experimental science. However, we reserve the right to prefer the castle, provided we are not required to live there. Indeed, some have similarly chosen the God synthesis of medieval thought, though Pound said, Aquinas' map not valid now, over a technology which cannot deal with its atomic and industrial wastes. Maybe with wall hangings and the fire logs of a forested land, they kept cheerful enough in those halls and towers, though we can hardly conceive it. But the Palladian delight of Stourhead, which Fielding would turn to Tudor brick, preserves from 1722 what our millionaires might still aspire to live in. Though heating and plumbing, even since the Jamesian era, have advanced, again at some cost to the globe, the question of science and progress being always the hidden cost. Anyway, as the Palladian and Gothicizing scene of musical Arne and Fielding would remind us, the familiar mode of freehold humanity had been made lovable from early in the century by Addison's Sir Roger de Coverley, a country right-mindedness which reaches through novels and essays, the early paintings of Gainsborough, this about 1751, the artist with his young wife and daughter, to Goldsmith, who spreads it over Europe, and to Fanny Burney, whose Evelina prepares for the balanced good of Austen. Persuasion. There they returned again into the past, more exquisitely happy, perhaps, in their reunion than when it had been first projected, more tender, more tried, more fixed in a knowledge of each other's character, truth, and attachment, more equal to act, more justified in acting. It is a study in the dialectic of one many to compare Pietro Longhi's Venetian mid-century family scene, a lady escorted by her husband for her portrait, how little it shares in the English openness of manner, yet how unmistakably is embraced in a single horizon of enlightened emergence from the artifice of court. And could not Haydn's plucked string trio from an Opus 1 quartet have moved either way, to the Italy from which it was inspired, or to the England which would make Haydn's music a household entertainment? Meanwhile, even in Paris, bastion of absentee noble play, of which Lord Chesterfield, I should have thought that Lord So-and-so at his age, with his parts and address, need not have been reduced to keep an opera whore in such a place as Paris, where so many women of fashion generously serve as volunteers. Boucher sweetening the opulence of Baroque for the Venus triumph of all those high-born volunteers, Rameau seductively reclaiming the heroic cantata. Fragonard passed Boucher, subliming into pure fluff the copulative drive of flesh, as if revolution and all could be staved off by nymphic sprees. Even in that Paris must not romantic wish have been as deeply seated as Rousseau was read, repudiated, and admired? Boucher himself, between sports of sea-girls, brushes his 1750 mill with the sighs that would lead Marie Antoinette to her cottage retreat in Versailles Park. Let it box the compass that Rousseau, in his operas, for he also wrote music, seems to outdo Fragonard. While witty Rameau, as in this minuet from Castor and Pollux, wakes the strain that would flow through Gluck and Mozart into a century of longing. Chardin, indeed, through 2 generations of court frolic, had quietly pursued the plastic composition of fables of the heart. Before mid-century, the cult of the antique, of which Winckelmann would become spokesman, was drawing pre-romantics to Rome. Vernet sketched the Ponte Rotto in 1745, and it was he who, at the same time, guided the deeper genius of Richard Wilson into landscape. The radiance of Cuyp is recovered in inwardness, as in Kant will secures what pure reason had forfeited. In music, the first fruit of that revival is Gluck's Orpheus, with the wistful dance of Elysian spirits. In English poetry, Gray's elegy still breathes that solemn hush. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing herd winds slowly o'er the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and leaves the world to darkness and to me. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn still